Well, this is a little new. I'm actually standing for a full video for once. It feels kind of weird. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and there's a good reason why I'm standing today. I want you all to get a good look at my full suit for once. Why? Well, today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite hobbies that happens to have a direct application to being a furry and especially having a fursuit. Yep, today we're going to talk about fursuit photography, specifically how to take pictures of fursuiters, like myself. It's one of the most popular forms of art creation in this fandom, and for good reason. The barrier to entry is extremely low, but the potential of honing your skills as a photographer is extremely high. But before all that, you gotta start somewhere, and that's what this video is designed to do. So let's go over the basics of how to take pictures of fursuiters. But before we get too far into things, let's go over the motivation for doing this. Why is learning how to take good photos of fursuiters such a good skill to practice? Well, forgive me for starting out a little bit blunt, but if you're at a convention or meetup, taking photos of fursuits gives you something to do. Honestly, I get a lot of comments on my videos about conventions from people saying that they'd love to attend one, but are afraid that they won't have anything to do since they might not know anyone there. And if you're looking to do something with your time at a con, taking pictures of fursuiters is one of the best options that will keep you busy. And at the end of it, not only will you have a library full of cute suitors, but that library of pictures is actually pretty valuable. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret about us fursuiters. Come here. We love having our picture taken. It's true, we could never have enough pictures of us performing in the physical embodiments of our personas. So a great way to start an interaction with a fursuiter that will undoubtedly be positive is to offer to take pictures of them. Fursuiters love this so much that if you get really good at it, we're willing to pay some serious money for it. There are photographers in this fandom that can make a full-time income going around at cons and taking pictures of suitors. And while that level of scale requires a lot of time and effort, if you can get a few consistent clients to take pictures of at a couple of conventions a year, you can bag a nice chunk of change for yourself. So yeah, it really pays off to know how to take pictures of fursuiters in this fandom. And I mean, it literally pays off. But everyone has to start from somewhere, and I'll be upfront with you here. If you're an experienced photographer already, this video might be a bit of a snooze fest for you. I'm really aiming for this particular video to be as beginner friendly as possible, so we're not gonna get into exposure bracketing, HDR, bulb mode, racking focus, none of that. This is going to be designed for people who just want to point and shoot. With that, I'm not even going to suggest what camera you should get to start, because I'm sure most of you watching already own an incredible camera. In fact, some of you might be using it right now to watch this very video. It's true, the cameras on phones these days are nothing short of marvels of technology. The color and details these things can capture from such a tiny and compact sensor are so good that it's one of the few things that smartphone manufacturers are actually innovating on and improving year over year. It's no wonder why the most popular camera on Earth is a modern smartphone, and the most popular place people view pictures is also on smartphones. So no, you don't need a fancy dedicated camera to take great pictures of fursuiters in this day and age. They can certainly help, and if you're a camera nerd like me, then they're fun to own and use, like I'm using one right now. But at the end of the day, they are honestly nice to haves, not must-haves for taking pictures of fursuiters. Alright, so you have your camera ready and are looking to get good pictures of fursuiters at something like a convention. Where do you start? Well, the biggest tip that I can give any photographer on taking better pictures is actually baked into the word photograph in the first place. Light is your friend. The word photograph is based on the Greek word phos, which means light, and graphe, which means drawing or writing. So when you're taking a photograph, you are creating a drawing with light. So it's no wonder that to take good photos, you need a good amount of light. This is especially true of fursuiters, since the colors of our suits can vary wildly on how they absorb such light. I'll show you what I mean. One of the reasons why I'm standing today is because I have my window shade open and I'm letting in a lot of natural light from my camera to use to capture my suit. And if there's one thing I know about dark fursuits like mine, is that they need a lot of light for them to look good. Watch what happens when I close this shade and turn off a couple of extra lights in here. Sure, this is a bit of an extreme example, but as you can see, I have officially returned to the void. So yes, it's no secret that light is important for photos, and in fact it's so important that camera makers, including your phone, know this and will sacrifice whatever they can to get the light they need to take a picture. There are a couple of ways that cameras do this, but the two that will be most noticeable to you is the camera decreasing its shutter speed or increasing its digital noise. Let's start with the first one. When you take a picture, you are exposing the camera sensor to light for a small amount of time to capture a moment. Typically, it's fast enough that it can freeze movement in that moment, but if your camera is on its automatic settings and doesn't think it has enough light to see the subject, it will expose the sensor to light longer until it gets what it needs. Now, this isn't a big problem if your subject is standing still, but if you're taking a wide shot of a bunch of fursuiters all moving around at something like a fursuit parade, your camera will need more time to get the light it needs to take the picture, which in turn exposes your sensor to light for a longer time and can cause things to look really blurry. So that's the shutter speed thing. The other thing that your camera might do is that if it can't get enough light to take a picture fast enough, it will digitally add its own light to make things visible. Now, the technical term for this is the camera raising its ISO value, and while it might sound like a great solution, that digital light doesn't come for free. Injecting the electricity needed to add that digital light also increases the noise of an image or makes the image a lot grainier and can mess with the overall colors of a photo as well. But again, in most automatic settings, the camera is willing to make those sacrifices for the sake of getting enough light to take a picture. That's how important light is. So to avoid your camera working harder than it needs to, the best tip that pretty much any photographer will give you is to add more light. This is why a lot of fursuit pictures are taken outside, where the sun can provide virtually unlimited light for your camera. And if they are taken indoors, fursuit photos are typically portraits where the suitor can stay still long enough for the camera to get its light. So if you've been taking blurry or noisy photos and don't know what to do to fix it, chances are your camera just needs more light to work with. It's literally in the definition of taking photographs. All right, okay, I'm sorry, that's enough ranting about light. Let's now talk about the composition of your photos. Simply put, your photo's composition is how things are laid out in the picture that you're taking. Having even a basic understanding of what makes up good composition can drastically improve the look of your photo. Now, there are a bunch of guidelines about composing photos, but some common ones that are used all the time in photography are the rule of thirds, using leading lines, and layering. The rule of thirds is this idea that if you divide a picture into 9 parts like this, the subject of your photo should be somewhere along these lines. So yeah, it's not always best to have the subject dead center of a picture like I'm doing right now. Even moving your subject just a little bit can make for a much more interesting shot. Using leading lines helps with this too. If there are any naturally occurring lines in your picture, it's good to align the subject to where those lines are pointing. This naturally draws the viewer to follow those lines and focus on your subject, which tells a bit of a small story in your picture as well. Finally, adding layers and depth to your shot can really make things pop. Adding something in front or behind the subject of your picture can make for a much more three-dimensional effect, which adds intrigue and interest to the overall shot. Again, these aren't the only compositional guidelines out there, and just like any art, guidelines or rules are meant to be broken. But keeping a couple in mind while you're getting your shots can make them that much more interesting and can also help you develop your own sense of photographic style. Keeping with the theme of making your photos interesting, especially when it comes to fursuiters, you can really get some intriguing shots if you incorporate the real-world environment. Now, I don't know if this is just a personal thing, but seeing a fursuiter, a large anthropomorphic animal costume, interacting with something in the real world that was built for humans really brings home what the core idea of being interested in furry really means to me. I think it's the contrast of animals with human features being among things that were designed for humans that really can give us a glimpse into that fantastical idea of what a world would really look like if we were actually all our personas. So if you're looking to take really memorable pictures of fursuiters, get them to interact with something in the human environment. It could be as simple as them sitting or even lying on a bench, but those pictures of furries mixed amongst other humans or doing otherwise very human things really adds to the mystique that fursuits have on this fandom, and also on people outside of the fandom as well. Coming back down to earth a little bit, another way to really make your fursuit pictures dynamic is to change your perspective. This is what I really like about photography. There are no rules on where you need to be to take a picture. Don't be afraid to get creative with your perspectives and angles of shooting. try shooting from low to the ground for a unique macro perspective, or from above for an interesting bird's eye view that could really give a sense of scale. You can explore different viewpoints by crouching down, standing on a chair, or moving closer to your subject. You don't just have to stand straight and still. Feel free to get really active with it. Finally, this is something that I'm sure most of you have done in some capacity before, but even after you have all of your pictures taken, don't be afraid to edit your photos. I know it's a little bit of a meme to ignore changing something in real time since you can always fix it in post, and while you should have most things figured out at the time of capture, the colors of your photo can always be adjusted to fit the look that you like. In fact, this is something that I do for every photo that I post. As wonderful as modern digital camera sensors are these days, they're not perfect, and for a lot of technical reasons that I won't get into right now, cameras have a really hard time with my fursuit. Honestly, the simplest way to put it is that cameras really don't know what to do with this shade of purple, and many of them shift it to something a lot closer to blue when translating the light they see into a digital image. But that's wrong. I'm not blue, I'm purple. So in every photo that I post and in my videos as well, I inject a lot more red into the blue of my fur to get that vibrant purple back that everyone's eyes see when they see my suit in person. Now, to be fair, that example is a little bit extreme and maybe even an exception to the rule, but at the end of the day, how your camera generates the colors of your photos is just an opinion that you don't have to agree with. And I'm sure you're all well aware of the wide array of free apps that you can use to edit and add filters to your photos, but keep this in mind, the colors that we see in an image can really affect the mood we get when viewing them. So feel free to make subtle changes, moody changes, or changes that get rid of color altogether. And yeah, keeping those 5 things in mind will help you get from taking pictures of fursuiters to taking good pictures of fursuiters. Remember, I can't stress this enough. Photography is an art form, so it's gonna take practice to get the basics down. I could sit here and talk all day about how to take photos, but if you don't go out there and experiment and practice and make mistakes for yourself, you're never gonna learn. But the opposite is true as well. If you keep taking photos and keep practicing, not only will you find what works for you, but start to have your own artistic style in the pictures you take, getting up to the point where people can look at your pictures and say, yep, that was definitely taken by so-and-so. And there are a ton of things that I left out that I didn't want to try and jam into this video. I know for a fact that I'm going to make a part 2 of this specifically focusing on the fursuiters themselves and how they can make certain poses or interact with specific environments to make their photos more fun. But for now, use this video as a springboard to start taking better photos of fursuiters. At worst, it gives you something to do at a convention, and at best, you are creating art that any fursuiter in this fandom will undoubtedly be grateful for. Alright, that's it for this one. I didn't realize how much more energy it takes to stand for a full video instead of sitting, so I'm gonna hop out of suit and probably go take a shower. But if you like seeing a Purple Panther rant about lighting, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for doing so, and I'll catch you in the next one. But until then, stay wild out there. Peace.